Hi guys, Josh here. Now I'm going to present to you guys some parsing strategies for Gnomeregan bosses in particular to make sure you get those 95 to 100 passes and get that beautiful purple, pinky, and maybe that orange color as well. And we're providing you the strategies that provide the most potential in you getting those passes in the first place. First up, a brief introduction. I'm Jose Demo from Shadowstrike AU, a tank for a guild called Angles. We're currently recruiting on Shadowstrike, and we have a lot of pumper DPS that pass quite regularly between a 95 to 100 area. Some of these strategies we've received from other people and used and adopted them to fit our group composition. Our group composition is basically cast through a melee group. We also have the 6% spell damage debuff weapon to maximize our caster DPS. We also run Demonic Pact, Wind Fury, Heart of the Wild. You name it, we've got it basically. Well, not Heart of the Wild, but Heart of the Lion. Now, firstly, I've assumed that you have a raid group with all the relevant buffs for casters and melee. So you got Wind Fury, Leader of the Pact, Demonic Pact, basically everything you could possibly have. So you got Heart of the Lion, you've also got Might, Wisdom, Grace of Air, Strength of Earth, you name it, I've assumed that you've got it. Now, I've also assumed that you have all the consumables and buffs, so trying to pass without these buffs that is pretty impossible, it's pretty difficult, even though one of our DPS did actually pass and get 100% buff without the boon, which is, I'm going to say right now, very difficult to do. These consumables also include Grenade, Dynamite, and any profession-specific consumables, like the Sigil and whatnot as well. I'm assuming that you guys are using these. And I assume you have all the debuffs available to you as well to maximize your DPS. If you do not have any of the buffs, some of these passing strategies may not be for you, as you may not kill the bosses in time, and you may probably die instead. First things first, let's talk about Grubbis. So Grubbis is the first boss of Gnomeregan, and he has 4 ways to trash before he spawns. He always spawns after the second irradiated cloud trash. So basically there's 2 mobs, which is him and his pet Chomper. Your composition should be 1 tank, 1 or 2 healers. You can probably 1 heal him as well, as long as the healer can the spell, and the rest is DPS. Grubbis has 4 main abilities: Irradiation, which knocks anyone behind him back, Trog Rage, which just does more damage, and Grubbis Mad, which just does AoE damage, and his pet, which has Petrify, which just stuns the tank for 6 seconds. You want to make sure either Petrify is interrupted, because it is interruptible, or that it's dispelled right away, because Grubbis can hit kind of hard, but overall he's a pushover. And also at the same time, he seemingly just resets threat randomly. Now let's talk about how you pass. Before you kill the 4th trash wave, which is the 2nd radiation cloud wave, which I mentioned before, kill all the wave but 1 mob, drag the remaining mob into the cave to the red dot below, so you can see that red dot at the top. That is where Grubbis spawns. The fight in the pass begins immediately, so you want all the raids set up ready to go from the word go, so you can pretty much kill Grubbis in about 30 seconds. Keep Grubbis and Chomper together and focus damage on Grubbis. Remember, no DPS on Chomper. After that, and after clearing through the safe zone, you got Vicious Fallout. So for trash clearing in particular, for Vicious Fallout, make sure you clear the portion that goes to the next boss, which will be the lower left corner of the room, as this is especially needed for the speedrun. With this composition as well, you don't need too much room for this boss. You only need 1 tank, 1 or 2 healers, and the rest DPS. I probably prefer 2 healers, given the fact that most likely you have ads spawning, because most of the passing strategies is just basically zerging the boss. The boss has 2 mechanics. He drops Sludge under you, which you just basically stay in as you zerg the boss, and it also slows you by 50%. He also at times summons free ads to cast, 1.5 second cast to summon free ads, and they just run to 3 dead rings on the ground. You can slow them and AoE them down. You can also stun them as well if you want as well. If they reach the ads, which are the bracelets on the ground, they respawn and they continuously cast a volley, which puts a disease on its target. You can just simply interrupt it and drag it in and keep cleaving it. These toxic elementals ironically enough do count to passing. Now, when the initial ad spawn, if you have a hunter, drop a frost trap, it's just basically all you gotta do is just slow them and just blast them. That's pretty much it. As I said before, if an ad spawns, you just interrupt them. Now here's a diagram for the passing strategy. So the main thing is just essentially zerg the boss. When the ads do spawn, have a hunter drop a frost trap before it occurs, so they're slowed and you can just pump damage on them. All damage on the ads count for passing. Now, if an ad does spawn, an extra ad which spawns the Plague Volley, interrupt it, bring it in, and keep AoEing. You do want to put the boss roughly where the green circle is, okay? Because then you can just go exit out to the next room and to the next trash area. Next up, after going down and clearing a wide hallway and going left at the end of the gauntlet to clearing more trash and more leper gnomes, you get to Cloud Pummeller 960. He has 3 abilities. Your group setup should be 1 tank, 2 healers, and 7 DPS. He has a Gnomeregan Smash where he does a frontal cone and anyone in front of him gets sent flying. Now, just an FYI on how to dodge this, you want to look for his side foot. So pretty much look for the left or right side of his foot and hide there. Ignore what the top half of his body is doing. Focus on where his feet is.
As long as you're on the horizontal line of his foot, you are safe and you won't get knocked back and you won't die. That's pretty much it. And I'll put this into the description as well. Now, it's got another one called Gear Toss, where he throws gears on the ground randomly. If you get hit by it, you get pushed back. Just make sure you avoid it. And the Claw at 20%, he'll randomly target a player and charge to them and doing lots of damage. You ideally, for passing, want to make sure that he's casting Gnomeregan Smash just before 20%, because most likely he'll cast a Claw at about 10 or 5%, depending on how much damage you do and how much damage you have in the group. Now, for passing strategy, this one's quite simple. Keep him in the center. That's pretty much it. And you just hope the DPS that's trying to pass doesn't get clawed and the gears don't go in the direction. He has no interrupt, so make sure you be as close to melee as a caster, because it makes it easier to move to dodge Gnomeregan Smash. So, you're only moving 5 steps is much better than moving 10 steps. That's pretty much the logic here. Now, after clearing through the hangar and various other trashways, we've got probably one of the harder bosses to pass on, which is the Electrocutioner 6000. The main reason why is that people overcomplicate his strategy. His strategy can be actually quite simple. A lot of people have relayed this Blood Boil, but it's actually a Blood Boil with a unique different twist. He has 3 abilities. So the group comp for this one is 1 tank, 2 healers, and 7 DPS. Discombination Protocol, which is AoE damage that knocks all players back. Magnetic Pulse, the AoE damage within an 8-yard radius, pulls anyone damaged by it into the person who has the debuff. This also ticks every 2 to 3 seconds. This is the most complicated mechanic coming up, which is Static Eye. It targets a person who's furthest from the raid, casts a 2.5 second spell, and the closest 2 players will take damage from Chain Lightning. So basically, the first person will get hit by Chain Lightning and then 2 others afterwards. Anyone hit by the spell is given a debuff for 20 seconds that they will take an additional 500% damage from Static Arc if they get hit again. So pretty much you die. Like if you get hit by it again, you will die. So the passing strategy is a bit large. So what you want to do is you want to have 3 players with 1 healer on the outer wall. So we'll show this in a diagram a bit later. So as you may notice, the inner wall, which is where the giant machine in the background and our power point is, and there's also the back wall. You want to have 1 range group on the back wall, and you want to have the boss in the center with the tank facing the boss to the inner wall. You want to have all the melee either on the left or the right side, with the other healer being 30 yards away from the melee. The main reason for this is that when the other healer gets Static Arc, his Static Arc will change to the melee. When the back wall people get Static Arc, it will only change to the people to the back wall. Make sure you have 3 players on the back wall and at least 3 melee on the left or right side. So as you can see here, a quick description is first Static Arc, the melee healer should receive it and run into melee. So when the melee healer gets targeted, he runs into melee, so it goes to the melee. And the second Static Arc, the range will get it, and the melee healer moves out to 30 yards again, and it goes rinse and repeat. If you receive Magnetic Pulse, you move to the side where the melee aren't on. For us, we have the melee on the right side, and the debuff to be on the left side. You can actually hold the debuff and continue DPS in the boss at max melee range. We've tested this multiple times, so you can be at max melee range while DPSing the boss with magnetic debuff. The tank's just got to be careful to make sure he's not in the circle, and the melee's got to be careful to make sure they don't put the tank in the circle. That's pretty much it. To give you guys a bit of a diagram of being shown here. So as you can see here, for the initial start, number 5 being the healer, of course, the melee healer, he runs out, he receives Static Arc, he runs in, as you can see in diagram 2. And then number 6 will get it, and then number 5 runs back out as per the first diagram. And you repeat this over and over again. The tank, the melee, the player of the debuff, and the range group do not have to move at all. Okay? They do not have to move at all. When you get the debuff, you initially have to move to 4, but after that, you don't have to move at all, and just basically do the fight as it is. Electrocutioner should go down extremely quickly, and you'll probably be sitting there being like, why did we make this boss fight so complicated when it's just so easy? Next up is probably one of the most funnest bosses in Gnomeregan, the Mechanical Menagerie. There are 4 bosses, all must die within 20 seconds of the first one dying. Self-repair is a 20-second cast. They cast their ultimate abilities at 75%, 50%, and 25% on each boss. Whelp does overheat, AoE damage around a boss. It's a 50-yard range, and the ad takes 25% extra damage, so you gotta be careful when equalizing the mobs out. Screw does a Rigid Fortress, which basically makes the bosses take less damage, move everyone out of it. Sheep casts Frayed Wiring on a boss, which is basically Thorns, does nature damage if you DPS it, kind of like Lightning Shield. It also spreads to other mobs as well that are near it, be aware of that. And the Chicken does Cluck, which increases its own and allies attack speed by 50%. And this actually hurts tanks a lot, so you're going to be very, very careful with that. Since we're doing a passing strategy, you've got to tank all of them together, which is going to be extra fun. But remember also as well, the buttons on the outer edge when pushed give mana. So be aware of the healers. You may want to keep pushing those buttons to get as much mana as you can, so you can keep the tank up, especially when he's probably got 2 to 3 bosses on him. Very, very important.
Now for more mechanics. They also have their own little mechanics other than the 25, 50, and 75% mechanics. The whelp has a breath, which is basically a straight line. He faces away before he breathes. You just need to make sure you're not in that line. It also just targeted a player as well, so we'll fixate on a player before firing a breath. You just need to move away from it. The chicken will drop an egg, which will explode. Kill it. That's pretty much it. It can be cleaved as well. Squirrel casts a widget volley, which interrupts any caster's casting. Widget volley can be interrupted. The sheep casts a binary bleed. It also moves extra slow as well, which is a 10-second silence and a 5-second stun within 8 yards. So melee damage done to it may stun the player. The sheep will also fixate on a random target. So what you want for this fight is 2 tanks, 2 healers, and 6 DPS. If you can get away with 1 tank, that's great. But I'm going to say right now, you probably won't get away with 1 tank. And also, being able to 1 tank it, Cluck is just going to be painful. So you need to make sure you have cooldowns ready for Cluck, because having the squirrel, dragon, and all that stuff really clock on you, especially if the dragon has overheat, it can do a bit of damage. Now for the parsing strategy, of course, as these last bosses, they get more complicated. Take the whelp, chicken, squirrel together on each other and cut this trio around the sheep. So basically, instead of cutting a trio around the arena, cut it around the sheep. Make sure that you or your 2 tanks or tank are always 10 to 15 yards away from the sheep. This allows the range to cleave somewhat at times, but also at the same time make sure that your tank doesn't die. Tank and the melee should be towards the outer edge, so the melee should be on the outer edge as well, so they don't get hit by the bleat. And the tank should only move the boss when the sheep gets within 10 to 15 yards, or the squirrel is casting Widget Fortress. The tank should be even moving around an anti-clockwise or clockwise circle around the sheep. Just basically call it out before you do any attempts on it. To give you a bit of an idea, here's this diagram here. So you can see here blue, the tank's cutting in an anti-clockwise direction, the melee on the outside, and the range in a circle around the white dot, the sheep. The main reason why you do this is that the sheep fixates on a player. So if it fixates on the tank and melee, it will move around in the circle. If it focuses on the healer, it'll also stay in that circle as well. So overall, it won't be being cut into Narnia. It will stay in that circle as best as you can. So this is the most ideal strat for it. It's most likely that a lot of it will be focused on the melee and tank, especially if you've got 3 melee and 1 tank. It's more than likely it's probably got a 40% chance to fixate on that group, and you can make carding a lot easier. You also probably want to place the healers on the ones closer to the buttons so they can quickly get mana and come back into the fight and heal the tank. Next up, we got Thermaplugg, and well, I'm going to say right now, these strategies get more complicated and complicated, but fortunately, Thermaplugg is actually quite easy. It's just is quite complex. There's 3 mini bosses and the main bosses. Bomb vents open randomly. If you got weak auras, you can get a weak aura where basically it tells you which bomb vent is opening, so you can do it. If they explode on a player, they basically drop an AoE patch on the ground. Pre-assigned people from 1 to 6, probably prioritize healers on this as well. If you close a vent, you cannot close another vent for 30 seconds. You gain a high voltage debuff. You also gain mana from pressing a button, same as Menagerie. There's the Firebot, which does a frontal punch, which puts 1 Sprocket Fire debuff on anyone in front of the boss, so the tanks have got to face it away. It also does a Furnace Surge, a 2.5 second cast. You want to kite this in a triangle shape, which is shown on a later diagram to maximize DPS. You do not want to run it outside the range of ranged, and you also run it in a way that the melee don't get hit by Sprocket Fire. Now, if your DPS is good enough, the boss should die after the first Furnace Surge, generally. The Firebot should be tanked in the middle during Furnace Surge. It should be cut in a triangle during the Furnace Surge to return to the middle at the end. So what I generally do is you cut it diagonally right or diagonally left, go along the bottom, leave it at either 6 or 1 on the pillars, and then move it back to the center. Now with the Frostbolt, do not use your free action potion. Save that for the last phase. Frostbolt hits the tank and applies a stack of freezing. If you're a gnome, you can escape artists out of this. Frostbolt does an AoE called the Coolant Discharge, which applies another freezing stack to everyone. Make sure you either Dispel, Blessing of Freedom, Escape Artist. Try to avoid using FAP as it won't be up for the final phase. Also, with the same as the Firebot, tank the Frostbolt in the middle. You do not need to move the Frostbolt for any reason. Now, for the Poison Bolt, he uses a Hazardous Hammer, which hits the tank and applies a nasty Radiation Sickness debuff to the tank, which is a disease. This needs to be dispelled by Shaman, Pally, Priest, or anything like that. Anyone who can cleanse diseases, just do it. Poison Bolt also uses a Toxic Ventilation, which is a channeled but interruptible spell. This spell does not appear in the cast bar. If you see the robot channeling toxic fumes and it keeps irradiating out of them, interrupt it immediately. Keep the Poison Bot in the center, and be wary that any of the first 3 phases that a bot blows up close to the middle, you can always just move the bot out. So if you have a fire bot or a freezing bot or a toxic bot just blow up and it's just, in the center, you move the boss to a different area. It doesn't impact the parsing too much, and you can still parse as it is. The last one is the ultimate bot. The ultimate bot has all the same mechanics as the first 3 bots, and now the bomb bots are randomized. So normally you got fire bombs with firebot, frost bombs with frostbot, vice versa. Now it's just any of them, okay? Now this is when you use your free action potions, because
You do not want to get freezing or anything like that in this phase when you're both dealing with fire and poison-based mechanics. Tank should keep the boss in the middle of the room as per the other phases. Ultimates can either be Super Cool Smash, which is obviously the tank debuff, the Hazardous Hammer, or the Sprocket Fire Punch. Be ready to dispel if it's the Hammer or Smash. Ultimate can also cast either Furnace Surge or Ventilation, or even Coolant Surge as well. It is better for Ventilation to be cast, as the boss doesn't need to be moved. If Furnace Surge is cast, then your Parsing takes a bit of a hit. If it is Surge, then moves the boss in a triangle as before. If it's close to dead, the tank should just soak up the debuffs instead, because you're realistically not going to die. The dot is actually the most important debuff of that move, not the actual initial damage instead. Once dead, kill Thermaplugg, dunzos. There's not really much you can do. Thermaplugg's just really easy to kill. Now for Parsing, keep the boss in the middle of the room, unless it Furnace Surges or a bomb AoEs nearby. If you're a healer or ranged DPS that has mana, you should be utilizing pressing the button. Make sure you close your pre-assigned targets or call out if closing. Give the healers priority. With Furnace Surge, tank should be more careful to never have the boss facing any raid members. Also for DPS, since you're doing nothing, bandage up every intermission phase so you can save the healer's mana. Very important. Use free action potions in phase 4, rely on the Spells of Freedoms in phase 2, and the Spells of Totem in phase 3. Now for what you've been waiting for, please see the below diagrams on kiting in particular. So you have the pillars named of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going clockwise, and you can see the Furnace kite path as well. So the yellow arrows is how you cast the Furnace Surge. You want to stop at grey for the Furnace Surge and take a few debuffs, have to, and then move it back in the center. This makes sure that the melee will never get hit and they'll always be behind the boss, as you can see the melee indicated by the red dots. With the green dots in particular, that's the range of healers in the pre-assigned locations, so they can hit 1 or 2 basically as well. Remember that the button is always on the left of the pillar, so 1's button will be round about here, and 2's here, 3, 4, 5, 6 is here. So just remember that as well. And that's pretty much the boss for Thermaplugg, and hopefully, you know, you guys have some happy parsing. Now, guys, if you have any feedbacks on the strategies that I've presented, feel free to leave any comments in the below. I did go through a lot of mechanics of the bosses as well, so people understand the mechanics that are occurring, so they can potentially build their own strategies and probably improve on the ones that are presented in this PowerPoint presentation. Anyways, guys, if you guys liked the video, subscribe if you want to, like if you want to, and comment if you want to leave some feedback. You guys have a wonderful day. See ya.